Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald. This week, I am joined by my special guest co-host, Quentin Williams. Quentin is CEO and founder of Dedication to Community. Together, we interview our guest, Perry Tuttle. Perry was a former Clemson football standout in the early 1980s. He caught the winning touchdown pass in the 1982 Orange Bowl. His celebration after the touchdown catch made the cover of the January 11, 1982 edition of Sports Illustrated. Perry was a first-round draft pick in the 1982 NFL Draft and played 10 years of pro ball in both the NFL and the Canadian Football League. He has gone on to become a noted author, speaker, and leadership coach, currently working with Fortune companies and professional athletes to help them navigate the marketplace with character and integrity. Perry shares incredible stories about his childhood. He flunked the third grade and had to repeat it. That left a lasting impact on Perry's life. A local school coach saw how quick Perry could run while he was playing freeze tag out with the local neighborhood kids and encouraged Perry to play football. Back then, Perry says he would watch the professional football games on TV and not just mimic the moves when he would play outside, but he would become the professional player in his mind. He goes on to talk about the importance of the law of becoming. There is a must-listen section of this episode where Perry shares about the strained relationship he had with his dad and how he went about getting the answers he needed. There are so many poignant lessons and stories shared here that will touch your heart. As a master storyteller, Perry's teachings inspire small and large groups alike to stretch themselves to overcome barriers and achieve their personal goals. Perry is a father of 6 and pops to his grandson. You can even see the pride in his eyes through the Zoom screen when he talks about his family. Please subscribe to the Today's the Day Changemakers YouTube channel. Stream this podcast on all streaming sites. Like us on Facebook and Instagram at Today is the Day Live It. I am the CEO and co-founder of the Zach G. Aploder Kids Foundation, connecting children and young adults ages 7 to 22 who meet the financial needs requirements with ongoing lessons in dance, acting, instrumental music, and vocal instruction. For more information, visit applaudarkids.org. The views expressed by all Today's the Day Changemakers podcast guests are their own. Their appearance on the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast does not imply any endorsement of them or any entity that they represent. And for more information about Today is the Day and this podcast, visit todayisthedayliveit.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Today's the Day Changemakers podcast. I am Jody Grunwald, and every week, as I always say, I get to meet and interview the most incredible changemakers who are making a difference in their corner of the world or the world at large. And today I get to welcome back one of my special guest co-hosts, Q. How are you, Quentin Williams?
I'm doing great, Jody. I hope you're doing well today, too.
I am. And I'm so happy to have you back. It's so wonderful to be able to have a co-host, and you have helped me meet some of the most incredible people that I've been able to interview. So thank you so much for that.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
So just a little bit about Q, because I really want to make sure that everybody knows, but you will also be able to hear a little bit about him at prior podcasts. But he's the founder and CEO of Dedication to Community, D2C, the national nonprofit he established in 2012. Quentin's career in law, professional sports, and leadership consulting culminates in D2C. And he's an attorney, a former FBI agent, worked for the NFL, the NBA. I don't know what you didn't do, Q, but we're just here. And then Perry Tuttle, how are you? You are our special guest today.
Well, thank you. It's a great day, especially here in Charlotte. So really appreciate you, Jody, for inviting me. And thank you for Q for inviting me and our friendship. That means a lot to me.
So for those who don't know, but you should, Perry Tuttle is an inspiring and incredible human. He is an American football wide receiver. He was a former Clemson football standout in the early 1980s, and his career continued into the National Football League, the Buffalo Bills, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Atlanta Falcons, and the Canadian Football League. He was a first-round draft pick in 1982 for the NFL Draft and played 10 years of football. And he is a Hall of Famer, college football All-American, CFL All-Star, husband and father of 6 children, and a very good pops to his grandson. So I know before we started the podcast, we talked about you being called Pops, but then I mentioned, what about Coach Pops? Because you wanted to be called Coach. So that's awesome that you are so excited about being a grandfather now.
Well, yeah, when my daughter, Kerrigan, when she's a single mom, and so sometimes single moms like that start off with the attitude that it was an accident. But I can just tell you that I call him the Big O. He's 6 years old, just turned 6 last week. His name is Chandon Oliver, and Chandon Oliver. But originally, when she became pregnant, his first name was going to be Oliver. So I just got used to saying I'm looking forward to the Big O. But when he was born, they switched the name from Oliver Chandon to now Chandon Oliver.
So it messed just a little bit, right? That messed up the thing about the Big O.
Yeah, and I went to Clemson, so I'm pretty slow. So I had to get used to it.
I don't believe. But you also, I just want to mention, you're a noted author and a master storyteller, and you're doing incredible things to share your story and inspire others. And please go to learn more about Perry. Where can people go to learn more about you?
Well, I've taken myself really off of the whole social media. When I became an author, I was pretty excited about a number of things. My second book that I wrote kind of took off, and it was about race, and so I really got so tired of talking about race, black people and white people. So I took it off the market, and so I'm not on. It's hard to find me, but that's intentional. And so
I have to say, it's true. I was looking for you too, but you are but then there's one place we can all find you, and you had me crying in my chair at my desk yesterday, and that is your TED Talk.
Oh, the TED Talk.
That everybody can find you. And it was an incredible TED Talk, by the way.
Well, thank you. That was a hard conversation. It was a big surprise at the very end, in which you saw. But so if you want to find anything about me, especially out in the space, just call Q. He would know.
I love that.
He found me.
he did. So Q, let me ask you, how did you and Perry meet?
We met several years ago at a golf tournament. My friend Bob Stiles brought me to what is now, I guess it's a Wells Fargo. And we were both in the same box. And I went up to the box and we sat down next to Perry. Now, Bob knew Perry, or knew of Perry, but we just sat down, and I didn't know Perry. I didn't know of Perry. And we just sat down next to each other and started talking. And we just decided we were going to have, I think we decided we were going to have coffee or tea or something. And it, God puts you in certain places for certain reasons. There's no reason why I would sit down next to Perry because I didn't know him, and there were other open seats, but I just said, I'm just going to sit down next to him. And it was incredible. That was, I don't know how many years ago that was, Perry.
Yeah, that was some time ago. Matter of fact, I remember the conversation in which we talked about Clemson and we talked about Boston College, but where it took a turn, Jody, was when he talked about his profession. And I don't know too many football players that go into law school. And so it was at the time in which I so desired to go to law school, not because I wanted to practice law, is because I want to think in a very critical way. I want to read in a very critical way. And so the conversation, so it was just natural for me to ask him to go, hey, let's go have coffee, because I was just going to find out, how did you do it? But the stories in which he told, I was just so grateful that he gave up his time. And so it's now been a number of years, and it's been a kind of a special relationship.
Oh,
Perry is he's a great human being, and every time he speaks, whether it's one-on-one or in front of an audience, it gives me reason to be introspective, and really his style of just communicating is fairly unique. So natural and vulnerable, humble, all of that wrapped up in one package. It's incredible.
Absolutely. And I got to witness a little bit of that on the TED Talk, and I was definitely, totally blown away. I want to get to that, but I want to go back a little bit. So talk to us a little bit about like where you grew up, what kind of life you had when you were a kid, what life was like back then.
Yeah. I'm the youngest of seven. And my four boys, three girls. My mom, just an incredible lady. Unfortunately, about 3 months ago, she just passed away.
Sorry.
Amazing person, just an amazing mom, the best mom you can ever hope to have. My dad, on the other hand, was probably the most racist man I've ever met growing up. Did not like white people at all. And matter of fact, throughout high school and certainly college, 4 years at Clemson, then 10 years in the pros, he never watched me play. It wasn't so much that he didn't love me, it was because it was just his attitude towards folks of different color really took him down a path of just being divided. And but my mom, just incredible lady. I think I had the best brothers and sisters in the world. They are just amazing. And so I grew up in right outside of Winston-Salem, a little town called Midway. And from there, we grew up in an all Black neighborhood. I don't know, Jody, if you've ever experienced, a 4-mile radius of just a Black neighborhood is probably the best kind of neighborhood you can grow up with. Everybody knew everybody, and it was just a fun place to be. On every Saturday, it seemed like every other house on a summer Saturday, people would wash their cars, and everybody would have the radio station on the same station. So it seemed like this big car wash, no matter where you went up to down the street. And it just seemed like a party every Saturday morning. It was incredible. I didn't know I was poor. My mom did an incredible job of just raising us while my dad was always in and out of prison. But she was incredible. If you can imagine what heaven is like, that's my mom. She's just an amazing lady. But flunked the third grade, and flunking the third grade was bad enough. But my third grade teacher, Mrs. Gatewood, said I belonged in a special class. And back in North Carolina, back in those days, I said special class meant you went to school on a short bus. And I remember coming home, and my teacher said that she had already talked to my mom. And I waited for my mom to come home from work, and I went running outside, and I said, "Hey, Mom, Mrs. Gatewood pulled me aside and said I was going to flunk the third grade and that I belong in Mr. Davis' class, and said that she had already talked to you." And I don't know how Mrs. Davis convinced my mom that I belong in that class, because my mom is pretty tough and she's always protected. And the only reason I knew I didn't belong in that class, Jody, is because my brother Eddie, we didn't even say Down syndrome. We said retarded. My brother Eddie was Down syndrome. And every single day, that short bus would drive up in front of our house and pick up my brother. There was only like 5 or 6 students on that little short bus. So that was a tough year for me. And so I grew up not only the experience of thinking that I had the best neighborhood in the world, but at the same time, I grew up with a dad who was always in and out of jail and prison. And I grew up with a lot of good friends, but I also grew up starting in the 3rd grade thinking throughout high school and throughout 4 years of college and 4 years into professional football, I've always thought I was dumb. I thought I was stupid. And when I flunked to third grade and Mrs. Gatewood said I belonged in Mr. Davis' class, that's the year I became dumb. And I don't know if you've ever experienced someone speaking into your life and you live that out. I did that for a number of years. And, but in the middle of all of that and all the stuff that I just talked about, I thought I had an incredible boyhood life. It was the best. Again, my mom made it easy. My brothers and sisters were amazing, and I had some really good friends, and I still do today with those people. But growing up, I love sports, and sports was the gateway to for me exercising the gift that was inside of me, and that gift kind of opened up the doors for me. And only later on, 4 years into the NFL, where I became this avid reader, where now I'm an author of all things. And so it's been an incredible ride. Matter of fact, Q, I'm kind of looking forward to my next season, and hopefully that I would finish that well.
I'm with you on that, Perry. You know, what interests me so much about you is people see, as a football player, you were 1,000 times better than I was as a football player. They see the success. You caught the game-winning touchdown in '81 for the '81 team, win the national championship. Clemson hadn't won once, in a long time after that. So really legendary status on the cover of Sports Illustrated. All this stuff, you're an author. You're getting a lot of notoriety as an author and as a speaker. And, folks look at you and they think, my goodness, this guy, he's just a talented guy who's had a great life and is still having a great life. But what I'm so intrigued with is when you talk about your journey, you talk a lot about the struggles, the challenges, the pain, and the trauma. How did that, and I relate deeply to that, how did that shape you as a person, who you are today? And would you give it all back? If you could say, you know what, that was just too much trauma. It was too much pain, too many struggles, too many challenges. I want to give that back. Would you do that?
Yeah, that's a good question. I battle with that. And I've heard a number of people who answer that by saying, I wouldn't change a thing. There are some things that I regret. There are some things that when people look at the outward appearance and, they say the nice things and they kind of look at you as a trophy. And the truth of the matter is that I understand what people see, the glory, but there's very little glory without the pain of it. And so the things that I would change, I would love to have heard my dad when I was, in the 4th or 5th grade, call out my name in the football stand. I would have enjoyed the experience of learning how to read and write early on. I mean, education doesn't spell out success. But it helps. And so there are some things, for instance, I love golf. Like you and I met at a golf tournament. So there's a term in golf called a mulligan, right? A mulligan is a shot, is a stroke that is so bad that the people that you're playing with or so embarrassed that you made that shot, so they offer you a mulligan, a do-over, right? Try that again. And so I think if I had 3 or 4 mulligans, I think I would, I would think I would start something different. I think I would love early on rather than judge. You know what I mean? If I had a mulligan, I wished I would have loved my dad the way I love my mom. And so, yeah, there are some things that I would want to change. But overall, now that I look back on some things, is the trials and the difficult. Listen, here's a crazy thing. I didn't find this out until I was in 11th grade. But my mom, when I flunked the 3rd grade and had to repeat, I only had 2 pairs of shoes. And my mom would guess. She would take a guess early in the morning on what pair of shoes I was going to wear every day. And she would take a scripture verse and put in my shoe every single day from the 3rd grade, the 2nd year of 3rd grade, all the way up to I was a senior in high school, every single day. That I may live and walk in a way that would bring glory, not only in my faith and to God, but certainly that I would represent her well. And so there are some things in which I would maybe change, but on the other hand, it's been, life hasn't been fair, but it's still good. I mean, I enjoy it. It's been hard. I do, I said this to my son the other day, the higher the calling that a person has on his or her life, the higher the calling, the gifting of a person, sometimes the darker the days in which you must travel. And so I kind of sensed that early on. It's like the law of becoming. Once I found out that someone believed in me. So when I flunked the 3rd grade, right? We used to play this game called freeze tag. I don't know if you've ever played that game.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we used to play this game called freeze tag when we were kids. And if you ever get tagged, you have to stand still until someone come and untag you or undo you, right? And I was so fast and I was so quick that no one could ever catch me, it seems. And so you get about 4 or 5 people on 2 teams, and it just seemed like, I would just run for days, and I would zig and zag, and no one could ever tag me. We had this little short, bald-headed white man came to an all-black neighborhood. He was the head coach of the Little League football team called Midway Eagles. His name is Coach Pete. And Coach Pete would watch us, all these Black kids, play this game. And he walked up to me my 2nd year in the 3rd grade, and he says, "Hey, Perry, why don't you come out and play football?" And I said, "Hey, Coach," and I knew of Coach Pete. I said, "Coach, look, I love football. I love the Dallas Cowboys. Well, I loved them then. I don't like them now, but I love them then, right? But I love basketball, and I love baseball. And so I asked Coach Pete, I would come out and play football if you give me number 22. And 22 back in the day with Bob Hayes and Q, I don't know if you remember him, but he was number 22. He was the fastest man in the world. And I wanted to be just like Bob Hayes. And so when I started mimicking Bob Hayes, I didn't mimic Bob Hayes to become Bob Hayes. I mimicked Bob Hayes because I am Bob Hayes, right? I mean, I would watch a game. It seemed like the Washington Redskins and the Dallas Cowboys were always on TV back then. And as soon as the game was over, watching the Dallas Cowboys, I would go outside and literally mimic what Bob Hayes did. I literally became a professional athlete in the 3rd grade. And so, this whole law of becoming, just like, and this is what I have to tell my children, be. So if like my daughter, she wanted to do fashion. She wants to get into fashion back then. And I said to her, show me some of your drawings. She says, well, I don't have any. I said, did you draw anything? She says, no. I said, in order for you to do what you say you want to do, you got to be that right now, 100%. You can't just wait. So I was a professional athlete that in my mind in the 3rd grade. And so I didn't have to wait. And so I tell my daughter, have you looked at any magazines? Have you, and I'm asking all these questions and the answer comes back no, then you just got to be today, right now. If you're going to be a doctor right now. Even at 8 years old, go look it up. Go Google medicine, go whatever you need to do. But don't wait until you get 25 and decide, okay, now I want to fulfill this dream. You got to do it right now. And then, so I look at B-E, you got to do that right now. Then you look at the word come, become. And once you be who you are 100%, opportunities will come. You don't even have to go to it. They just come to you. And that's what happened to me. And so there are some things in which I had to learn. And but I look back on it. And so if I had some mulligans, yeah, I mean, there's some things I would redo. I mean, just like in my faith, right? My faith early on was, to tell everybody about, do you want to go to heaven, right? Because the alternative is not good. Well, I wasted so much time doing that. But if you give me a mulligan and I had to do that over again, just give me the character trait of love, where love is patient and love is kind and love is not self-seeking. So I wasted so much time in this whole idea of judging rather than, if you give me a mulligan, I would start my faith over again by not telling people you need to go to church. I would just love them.
Perry, I want to ask you, talk a lot about the judgment piece. And you, if you went back, that would be the piece that you would change. What was the catalyst that made you realize that you were judging and that you wanted to switch gears and really come from this place of love?
Yeah. I don't know when I really noticed about the whole judgment piece. It just seemed like I stood in line almost every day in my mind, looking at people, and based on what they look like, how they talk, or what words they use, it just seemed like it was just natural in our society to make a judgment call. I was standing in line not too long ago, and there was this young blonde hair girl. She was at Starbucks, and she had tattoos all over down from her arm. She had a sleeveless strap blouse on, and she had tattoos all the way down her arms, all the way down to her hand. But there was a picture on her shoulder of this beautiful portrait of this face. It was gorgeous. I don't know who put the tattoo on, but it was just gorgeous. And I'm standing there, I'm looking at this young, beautiful, blonde hair. She looked like she was 17, 18 years old. We're just standing at Starbucks waiting on our coffee. I don't know what she was waiting on. So I said to her, Jody, I said, excuse me. I wanted to say, excuse me, sweetie, because that's what I would say to my daughter, but I guess I better not say sweetie, right? So I said, excuse me. I said, that portrait on your arm, that is absolutely beautiful. And immediately tears started running down her face. Now the people who's serving, the employees at Starbucks, they're looking at me like, here's this old guy, must have said something to this beautiful young girl that would make her cry. Now I'm trying to like, no. And what happened was this. Once she stopped, she go, and she stopped and she said, sir, you're the first person to acknowledge my sister who passed away. I honor her by putting her face on my arm. And you're the first person that acknowledged her. And she reached over and she hugged me. Now the employees at Starbucks are wondering, oh, now they're confused. They thought I must have said something that hurt her. Now she's hugging me. And my point is this whole judgmental thing. I believe that in our society today, there is this hunger coming from young people. And we see blue hair, we see orange, and we see crazy clothing, and we see tattoos, when in fact, all they're saying is this: do you see me? Do you? And because of that, I've stepped out of the line of judging. And how it started, I don't know. But I know how it ended with me. I mean, my brother Eddie, who looked different, his eyes were always big and he was awkward, and people didn't touch him only because of being Down syndrome. And so I learned based on the outward appearance how people view you. And so when I flunked the third grade, I so much wanted to have the outward appearance so that I didn't want to go through the experience of what my brother was going through. So I faked it. I looked the part, I smelled the part, and it didn't seem real, authentic. When 4 years into the NFL, I found myself on a Wednesday evening. And I looked around. I didn't smoke. I didn't drink. I didn't go to church. I didn't do anything. I just thought I was a good guy. But 4 years into the NFL, I kind of looked around and I thought, is this it? Is this all? Is this what I was hoping for when I said I want to be like Bob Hayes? Because can you imagine going that long thinking two things? One is, I'm dumb. And the other one is, I'm just going to fake it until I can get through it, right? And so judgmental is just it's just too heavy a burden to continue to live that way every day.
Right. You know, you mentioned that your dad, right? You said he was racist when you were growing up, and it makes sense that, you know, unfortunately, we learn things from our families and we don't take with us, right? We say we're never going to be like someone, and then all of a sudden we realize that we have some of those similar traits and we don't realize it. Now, Q, in the work that you are doing all you can to marry community and law enforcement so that they can have better communication and understand each other better. And in essence, it feels like what Perry's talking about in regards to his dad, he really didn't see, you know, color was a real issue for him and for so many still out there. What do you say to that, Q? I'll start with you. And then Perry, I'd like to just ask you a follow-up question to that would be, what do you think we need to do to make sure that that doesn't continue as well? So that question really is for both of you.
Well, let me just say, Perry is considered a part of our faculty at D2C. He speaks, he presents to law enforcement for us, the stories he tells of the interaction in life between authority and the general public. They're just extraordinary. I think, you know, I have to say this about the challenges first, Perry. Like your challenges, I don't know that we will never know that you're the father and grandfather you are without having that dynamic with your father, because you learn what you don't want to become, perhaps.
Yeah, right.
You know, going through the third grade experience twice, maybe you're not an author several times over, a voracious reader, because you learned what you didn't want to become when you went through that experience. So I have a similar pathway, and I've put aside the regret about it because I've said to myself, those challenges and struggles actually developed me into who I am. And I don't know that I would have become this without them. So the way I look at the race issue is similar to the way you look at it. It's how do we boil it down to humanity? Just human beings, loving human beings. I really enjoy what you say about that. The counter to judgment is love. So, you know, we all are born with judgment, but we're also all born with love. It's our decision at some point whether we skew either way.
That's right.
And so I'm taking that one with me, that we need to be more loving in counter to the judgment and stop ourselves when we feel we're going to that place of judgment.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I really appreciate that. I remember the Wednesday night in which I called my mom and told her, when I kind of looked around and said that, you know, the NFL lifestyle is this it? I thought I would be a lot more happier. I thought fame would come my way, and it just seemed like fame kind of tricked me. You know, I thought fame was going to give me privileges, but it took away privileges. And so I remember just calling my mom and says, "Hey, Mom, you know, I prayed for the first time in a long time." And she started crying over the phone, because when I walked away from high school, and the way I grew up, you know, we had to go to church. But I remember leaving high school and thinking, I don't even want to go to church. I mean, why would a loving God allow my mom to go through the hell she went through with a man like my dad? That doesn't make any sense to me. And so I went through freshman year, then 4 years into the NFL, and kind of looked around and said, God, I really need help. I wasn't really depressed. And I had a beautiful home. I was single. I had 3 cars. I mean, you look at me and go, man, what a great life. But I remember what my mom said on that Wednesday night. And she says, hey, babe, she always called me babe, being the youngest. She said, babe, would you start praying for your dad? And I was like, hey, Mom, why don't you just divorce him? Right? I can help. I can take care of him. But she says, no, would you start praying for him? And I started. And so long story short is this: 8 years before my dad passed away, I was flying from New York and I flew into Charlotte and I drove to Winston-Salem. There was these burning questions, with 6 children, there was this burning question that I've had for my dad for a long time. And there was 3 questions. The first one is this: Dad, do you love me? So I remember driving up he was watching Gunsmoke, if you remember Gunsmoke. But he was watching Gunsmoke, and I interrupted his TV show, and I said, hey, Dad, can I talk to you? And he said, son, I'm watching Gunsmoke. And I said, hey, Dad, do you love me? And he said, son, I love all my children. I'm like, no, Dad. I'm not talking about Wayne or Brenda, Jackie. I named all my brothers and sisters. I'm talking about me. I have never heard you in all of my life say, I love you. Do you love me, Dad? And it dawned on my dad 8 years before he died that he has never told any of his children that he loved them. Now, we kind of knew it, but he's never said it. And so tears started running down his face. And I said, hey, Dad, are you proud of me? I've done a lot. Now I'm an author and I played in the pros and I started my own company. I'm married and 6 children. Are you proud? And he says, I'm proud of you, because he has never said it. I never heard it. And here's the last thing I asked my dad, and this is where race come in. When the Buffalo Bills called and said, hey, Perry, you're the first round draft choice, that's when I realized I can buy anything that TV said that would make me happy, and I bought. I bought the best looking car that was on the road. I bought the best looking clothes. But the one thing I wanted to buy more than anything when I was a little boy, I wanted to buy my mom a home. But because I didn't like my dad, and because my dad did not like white people, I bought this house in an all-white neighborhood, thinking that my dad wouldn't show up. And he showed up. They lived in that house for 17 years. And so 8 years before he died, here's my last question I had. They were living in that house. And I said to my dad, Dad, you say you love me. You're proud of me. Here's my last question. Would you go tell somebody? And he went outside. My mom and I stood on the front porch of this neighborhood. And my dad walked across the street to Mr. Charlie, a white couple, a white man, a man that waved at him almost every other day. And I saw my dad go next door and knock on his door. Mr. Charlie came to the door, and my dad introduced himself. 17 years. And Mr. Charlie says, yes, I know who you are. I've been waving at you for 17 years. And the thing is, I heard my dad ask Mr. Charlie for forgiveness of his racist attitude. And then I heard my dad tell Mr. Charlie about me, how much he loved me, how proud he was. And so the experience of seeing my dad live out the rest of his life going fishing with Mr. Charlie was transformation, right? And so the idea of race really comes down to not experiencing, what is white and what is black and what is Asian. The experience is, can you find love? I mean, can you embrace the fact that you're looking at another human being and finding love? And my dad did that. He finished his race well in life by embracing the fact that that he can ask for forgiveness. And unfortunately, I'm not really sure that a number of that is not. We should have that debate, that talk, that conversation. It's not about what you and I can do that's different, but how much are we most alike? Yeah, and so anyway, it's I wrote. Q would know this. I wrote a kind of little silly book about that whole thing, and it sold, but one of the things because of my faith, I just learned that, black is only beautiful if it's biblical, and white is only right if it's righteous, right? We just kind of turn that around and mess it up, but it really comes down to love. So anyway, that's my sermon for today.
That was beautiful. And I need to always have tissues next to me when I talk to incredible people like you and Q and others. I mean, that's the key, is that we're here to teach, right? For those who may not have been ready before, they hear something that, can just click in their minds, and the work that you're doing is so important, because that's what we need to do. Wake up people. You woke your dad up. He was sleeping.
Yeah, that's right.
And he was ready for the message. And sometimes we're not ready. We have to be ready for that message. But if you didn't go and ask those 3 questions that day, those 8 years would have been gone, and you would have been still talking about the way he was before that. So when I say, and I say it a lot on this podcast, it just takes one person to believe in you. It just takes one question. It just takes one person to say, you're important. We have to believe it ourselves, but it's sometimes just that support. And for your dad to say that he went fishing with this gentleman afterwards, I mean, it's just beautiful. So you taught an incredible lesson to someone who was supposed to be teaching you. And sometimes I say everybody we meet is either our teacher or our student or both. Just still depends the conversation.
That's right. Yeah. My dad never came to watch me play at Clemson, but he took his grandchildren to watch football at Clemson. I mean, that's the change, right? And it is finishing the race well. I mean, that's my desire as because I've kind of stumbled and fell and stumble, and I just want to finish the race. I want to finish the race breaking the tape, right? I just don't want to limp over the finish line. I want to finish by breaking the tape with some friends. Yeah.
So what's current in your life right now, and what's the future look like for Perry Tuttle?
Yeah. So I guess I can relate this to a football game. There's a first quarter. I've experienced the first quarter goes from like being 18 years old to about 25 years old. That's the first quarter. Second quarter is 26 to about 34, maybe 37. Then there came halftime. And so halftime was about 38 to about 42 years old. Then about 45, I went into the third quarter. And at halftime, I felt like I was behind. And Q knows this. In a football game, there's one thing that you want to do before you go into halftime. You want to look at the scoreboard, and you want to know that you're ahead. I went into halftime as a dad and as a husband feeling like I was behind. And so I came into my third quarter with a whole different game plan. And so now the fourth quarter, I'm not staring at the clock. I know I'm wearing out this analogy, but I'm not staring at the clock anymore. But I want to finish the fourth quarter with fun and purpose and meaning. And I want where it used to be where I got used to the applause growing up. And once the crowd noise went silent in all of our lives, especially in sports, when the time is cut short, whether you retire from sports or you just get cut, the crowd noise will go silent. And if you're not ready for the applause to go silent, I went into a dark space, but I came out of it. And so now I'm entering this fourth quarter, and I'm pretty jacked up about it. So there's 21 million at-risk males. But most of them were Black boys. And I decided that I'm going to go after them. And I'm pretty jacked up about it. And so we're creating this space, this mobile device, where it engaged of 21 million. It's almost like getting a ding. So whenever you hear your phone you get a text message and get a ding, and everybody looks around like, was that for me? We're literally creating a ding that certain at-risk population would hear. And all it's saying is this: I'm proud of you. You matter. You're worthy. And so come and join us. There are words to be spoken. And so we're going to go after them, because if we don't, we're going to have men like Q who are going to always address that population. So we're going to go after them in such a way that it's life-changing. I mean, it's a reversal in a good way. We're going to literally overthrow negativity.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
That is so inspiring. And I can't wait. Is there a rollout date for that yet? Is that already started?
It is not a rollout date, but I've received some money. I've gone to certain people and says, hey, listen, we're going to create a platform of learning. So this is how it came about. My youngest son, and I don't know how much time we have, but my youngest son, he called and he says, hey, Dad, I want to buy some Air Jordans. And Jody, I don't know if you know how much Air Jordans cost, but look, I'm not paying $250 for Air Jordans, right? I hope Michael doesn't listen to this because I work for him. But the thing is this, is that, so I decided, okay, we'll talk about this when we get home. So in the next 2 or 3 hours, so what I went to an ATM and I got out $500, went back to my office, took out 7 envelopes. And on the outside, I had 7 questions. And inside the envelope, I put money in each envelope. So the first envelope. So when I got home, I said to my son, you want Air Jordans? There's some money in each envelope. If you answer these questions, you get to keep this envelope. And so the first question was, how many points do you get when you kick an NFL field goal? That was easy for him. He loves football. He says 3. I said, okay, great. So I gave him the first envelope. So he goes, I said, you want to keep playing? He said, yes. I said, name the #1 song that Michael Jackson wrote that went #1. Any song that Michael Jackson wrote. He says, Thriller. I'm like, great. And it's $40 in that envelope. And we went on. We finally get to the 4th envelope, or maybe the 5th envelope. It had $100 in it. Name the team that Jackie Robinson played for and what city. He said, Dodgers. And I said, great. What city? He says, LA. I said, So his mom and his sister got, they talked me into giving at least half of it. So I did. So the fifth envelope, and I won't go into all of them, but the fifth envelope was this. There was $200 in it. Name the city in which Dr. Martin Luther King was assassinated in. You know what he said? Selma. And I said, what? Selma. And his sister, who graduated from college, says, hey, Dad, can I play? Can I play? And I said, yeah, you can play. We were at the kitchen table. Because right now, for my son to say Selma, I'm pretty ticked off. And I'm not ticked off at the school system. I'm ticked off at looking at his mom and looking at me, who are Black people who should know better, right? And so my daughter says, I want to play. And guess what she says? She says, I know that the city is in Mississippi. Now I'm really mad. And this is what I said to my two children that was at the dinner table. How is it that you can get mad at white people who you say don't know you when you don't know you? And so we're creating this platform where the more you know, the more you get rewarded. And so we got some people that have come on board with this ding, and it's pretty powerful. And I can't wait to roll it out.
That sounds incredible. And that story was incredible. And just so you know, so the Dodgers, my grandfather had Jackie Robinson in his kitchen because my grandfather was the butcher for the Dodgers stadium and where they played over at Ebbets Field. And his name is in the book. There's a book that's written about the Dodgers and his name is in there. So very
wow. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it.
That's incredible. That's awesome. So thank you for that story and for all of the, I could talk to you for, I mean, as Q told me that was going to happen, that I could talk to you for hours.
Well, I want to thank you. Thank you for the invite and Q, thank you for your friendship. That means a lot to me.
I'm not done yet though. So before we have you go, Q, I want to just push it over to you for a minute. Is there anything else you want to ask Perry before I ask my last question?
No, I learn something new every time I speak to Perry, and I really have an appreciation for his friendship as well. And I thank you very much, Jody, for doing this with Perry.
Of course. And I swear, whenever I hang up from one of these podcasts, I just think to myself, I cannot believe the most incredible people that I meet and the lessons I've learned over the last several episodes, all these episodes. It's incredible. So Perry, the question I ask everybody at the end is, if you knew then what you know now, what would that be?
That's a great question. If I knew now.
Then, if you knew back then, it's basically the question it turned around is, what would you tell your younger self?
I think I would say that failure is not so bad. I mean, failing at things doesn't mean that you're a failure. I went so long thinking that I was a failure when in fact, failing made me better. It's, I think I would have embraced that more. I would have anticipated it. And just because it's hard doesn't make it wrong. And, but I think my question would have gone back to my dad, though, really. Then my answer would have gone back to, I learned later on when my dad just stopped cold turkey, stopped drinking, and he became this incredible husband and dad. I wished I would have listened to him more. I I wish I would have had the right questions to have asked. And, you know, I wish I would have kissed him when I was a little boy more. But it, you know, now that I know the power of fatherhood, and I know the power of being pops. Words matter. Simple words, touching matters. So when you say a word that, hey, I care, and you touch at the same time, something happens in a kid's life. And I didn't get that, but I'm doing that. It is, and you can see it. You can. They're not even my children, and I do it, and so I don't know if that answers, but
absolutely, it absolutely did. And you know what? It reminded me of my dad's saying that he taught us, which was life is about conversation, a hug, and showing up. And those are the things that you just talked about. It's all about connection. Any way we can connect. People just want to feel that. We're humans. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah. I think the greatest gift that I have, that I keep beside my bed, is a love note that my dad wrote me. My dad has a 4th grade education. And so the day that I asked him those 3 questions and he came back into the house, I said, hey, Dad, can I ask you to do me a favor? Can you write me, you know, anything that you always wanted to say to me? So he wrote out, I love you. Then he erased it. And he says, okay, because he spelled love wrong. And he wrote, I love you, the second line, I love you. And he didn't like the way it looked. And he started the 3rd line, I love you. And he said, here. That's the only written thing I ever have of my dad. It's just that, those 3 lines. The first one is marked out, and the other 2, the second line, love is misspelled, and the 3rd one, I love you. And it's a gift. Yeah.
It's a huge gift. Thank you for sharing your gifts.
Yeah, but thank you.
Sharing yours as well. And one thing before I end is that I love what you said in your TED Talk. So I do want to encourage all the listeners to go, please take a listen and see an incredible ending to this TED Talk. And by the way, your children's names are awesome. You're the best names. I love them.
Yeah.
But you say one line in there that really I will always remember is do all you can while you can. And I think that is just so powerful.
Do all you can while you can.
Yeah.
I'm scheduled to have eye transplant this coming January. This is going to be my 23rd surgery where they're trying to save my eyesight. It's been a painful road, but I'm so grateful that I can see. I drive during the day, but do all you can while you can. See all you can while you can. Experience all of that while you can. In light of all the stuff we've been going through, especially with COVID, do all you can while you can. So thank you.
No, thank you. Q, thank you as well. And thank you for bringing Perry into my life now. I'm so grateful.
Thank you. Thank you both for being an inspiration to me on this day. And I look forward to watching this.
Yeah, me too. Me too. There's so many nuggets of information and inspiration that people will be able to take away. So Perry, I hope you can come back on and give us an update. And I know there's so many more stories that I'm sure you could share and inspiration. And I want to hear more about this incredible program you're creating for men out there who are in that underserved and the need population.
Right.
We want to be there to support in any way that we can through the podcast and sharing that out. So please feel free to come on as soon as you can to share more information.
I can't wait. It's going to be fun.
It is, absolutely. So I'm going to say what I always say at the end of every podcast. Today is the day you cannot go back to yesterday, and you do not yet own tomorrow. So what small or large step today are you taking to get yourself just a little bit closer to your goals? Thank you again to Perry and to Q for sharing your incredible insight and inspiration. And we'll see you next week, everyone. Bye.